This is Taylor with Lights on Grand Park. I wanted to do a small, not necessarily a tutorial, but an introductory video for the how to build these lights. A lot of people look at the lights and they think that it's very, very expensive, and there's no way that they would want to start that hobby because, you know, it's expensive. Well, you can actually build your first prop for less than $50 and then get the network set up for less than 100. Like it is cheap to do if you know what you're doing. My entire goal for this entire project was to do it as cheap as I possibly could and still make it look as good as all of the other people who use more expensive equipment. So I'll go ahead and start. I basically use the cheapest pixels possible. These are 5-volt LED WS2811 pixels. Comes in a pack of 50, and they are about $6 a piece. You can actually have them for $4.80 is what I purchased mine at. You probably could get them a little bit more expensive. I don't know how good of a deal I really got, but like I got mine super cheap. So I don't know if I'll be able to get them again at $4.80, but I do know you can get them all day long for about $6 a piece as long as you buy about 1,000 a piece, or not 1,000 bundles, but 1,000 pixels. That goes by pixels. So if you were to buy just this one, it would say 50 pixels. But anyways, yeah, they're super cheap. 5-volt. A lot of people use 12-volt. 12-volt is good, but they are twice as expensive. The difference between 5-volt and 12-volt is the voltage, of course. 12-volt also uses more amps, and it also uses more. You can run more 12 volts in a row and still have them at 100% brightness without a whole lot of power injection. That's what these things are. You have to run power on both sides of these. However, you can get away with running them every 100 pixels and without any issue. Anyway, the other thing that I use are these chips. These are called Node MCUs. And before you go out and buy Node MCUs, make sure you read the description. There is a specific model you want to check, because there is another model of Node MCUs that are not as good, and I'm told they fail often. Those were the first ones I bought, and they were a mistake. These are like, you can do all sorts of things with this, and they're very difficult to break. You could throw this up in the air, throw it against the wall, and it'd probably still be fine. You can touch it on all sorts of different things. You can touch all the little terminals and not have any problems. Like, it'll still work. So don't be scared of these. It's not as bad as it seems. Anyways, those things are typically like $2 to $3, super cheap. And then I have these. These are 5-volt, 300-watt LED power supplies. I am sorry it's backwards. I'll try and fix that. I don't know if I can. Anyways, this is a 5-volt, 300-watt power supply. This will run about 1,200 pixels and maybe 3 node MCUs if you want, but one node MCU can run 1,200 pixels without issue. I like to run one node MCU per prop that I have, and I don't really have any issues running those. The other thing that you'll need is a breadboard. Okay, technically you don't need to use a breadboard. A lot of people say that you should really solder it to a project board, and you probably should. I'm doing mine as cheap as possible and as easy as possible. I hate soldering. Can't stand it. So this is what I like to do. And there's a lot of people who don't like soldering. And this is honestly the best way to avoid soldering, is to do this. And these things are pretty sturdy. They're pretty stable, and you're really not going to break a breadboard. Anyways, this is how I have mine set up. It's the Node MCU and this little blue chip here. That is called a logic level converter. I put that on every single one of my projects just because, like, it's a super cheap piece of equipment that will it'll allow you to run longer cords, just longer lines of not necessarily longer strands, but longer lines before you touch the first pixel of your lights. Like, I can have my chip probably 200 feet away from my lights with that thing and not have an issue. And those chips are 50 cents a piece. Like, they're super cheap, and if that's something you should not skip on, in my opinion. The other thing is a Nano Station Loco M2. This is probably the most important thing for your network. Just buy this. It's $40, $45. I think you can even get it for $40. Just, I don't know. Make sure it's an M2 because it is a 2.4 gigahertz model. There is an M5 that does the 5 gigahertz, and these chips only run on 2.4, so make sure you get that. Anyways, that thing is $45, and that sends all of the multicast signal. I run on multicast. I used to run only on unicast, which if you're not familiar with some of the speak, it's okay. I'll explain some of it later. But the difference between unicast and multicast is before one of the pixels lights up a certain color or turns off or does anything, it has to talk to the router after it receives the first signal. So it has to have a handshake to basically say, yeah, I got it, and then it basically does what it's supposed to do. With multicast, it's not telling the router whether or not it did it. So there's a lot less lag. Problem with that is, let me turn this down because show's running right now and I don't want to make it. Ooh, don't do that. Okay. Anyway, the reason why you would use multicast is because there's no handshake involved, so the lights are faster. But you must have one of these to set it up right. And it's super simple to set up. I will do this in a later video and explain exactly what you need to do to set it up. I'll also go through the Raspberry Pi at some point. I'll do all sorts of different videos to explain a lot of this stuff. But right now, I'm just trying to show exactly what I use for my setup and how cheap it is. That's kind of my entire point. Like, yeah. Let me go and show you how the garage is set up. So the garage has all of my permanent LEDs. Of course, not in here, except for those. Those were set up a while ago. But this is my setup right here. Ignore all the junk. There's a lot of it. I've got a whole bunch of stuff to put up. Anyway, there is no router involved at all. There was, but I stopped using a router because I found out all I need to do is just, this is the Raspberry Pi, and it runs this cord to this, which is a power over Ethernet injector that comes with that, which is the access point. that sends the multicast signal to all the chips and tells all the lights what to do. This right here powers my roof and garage. So that's one section of roof, that's the second section of roof, and this is the third section of roof. And I just found out that these things can really go like over 1500 or like 12 to 1500 pixels without any issue. Each of these are only running on 400 or just about. I also found out these things can run probably about 12 to 1500 pixels as well. So I'm probably going to swap one of these out to allow more devices on one of them. Anyway, that was probably more than you needed to know, but skip forward. So the other thing that I also use is a lot of people spend like $50 on trying to get the cars to be able to hear a radio station. I use this. This is like a $12 chip. Super cheap, and I mean, it's not bad for your first show. If you want to, you can upgrade it later. And that's kind of my purpose for doing everything so cheap. Upgrade a lot of this stuff later. Yep, sorry. I can upgrade all of this stuff later, and that's kind of the entire point of doing it as cheap as I can, because everything is completely like modular. If I want to change anything in my setup, I can swap it out like in a heartbeat. If I want to use a different chip than the Node MCU, then I can do that. Or if one of my Node MCUs is dead, it only costs me about $2 to fix. Whereas if I had a Falcon player, there's another company out there. It's called Falcon, and don't get me wrong, they're fantastic chips, totally worth the money. But the problem is, they cost about as much as my roof lights costed. Like, they're probably about $300, maybe more. I'm not sure. It's been a while since I've researched them, but I looked into them and I'm like, I don't really want to get into that. And plus I want to nerd out because I'm a nerd, and I wanted to play with these nice little chips here because these are fun. And you can do a lot more than just LED lights with them. Like, there's all sorts of different things that you can do with them. In fact, well, I mean, these are LEDs as well, but I did my cabinet lights have the Node MCUs up there. And okay, Google, turn on the over cabinet lights. Okay, Google, make the over cabinet lights blue. There's all sorts of different things that you can do with these chips. Like, they're just so much fun to play with, and literally you can do all sorts of things. So there's a big reason why I'm doing a lot of these this way. It's just fun, honestly. And it's fun to build a lot of the props, and it's fun to do it cheap, because then my wife doesn't complain. How much did you spend on that? $20? I don't know. But yeah, I mean, you can build something as cheap as my arches probably costed $8 per arch, if that. And I have 8 arches, so I probably paid $64 in total. And it's probably a lot less than that, in all honesty. I'm not really sure. It's PVC pipe and LED strip. That's it. Anyway, this video has gone over a little too long. I was going to show my setup, but it's already at 14 minutes, and I think that's too long. Feel free to look at some of the other videos for Lights on Grand Park. They do show the setup, and it will show you how fast this entire setup is. Just know it is actually changed since those 2 videos, and now it's even faster. So there's almost no lag in this entire thing. And these are using cheap $2 crappy chips. Anyway, this is Taylor with Lights on Grand Park, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you didn't, well, I don't care.